Peace. What's good? How y'all doing? This is ZaZaAli. Today is Wednesday, September 23rd, 2020. I pray that this message reaches you all in the best of health, spirit, and mind. I am doing really well. Thank you. I decided to make an executive decision about my The Gods Are at War series. My intention was to do part 3, Science as a Weapon, and to merge the conversation about politics in with science as a weapon, but it's just too much information, particularly for science as a weapon. I've told you guys I don't have my books here with me, so I'm kind of having to do a lot more combing through stuff on the internet in order to lay out the type of presentation I want to lay out to you guys, and make sure that I arm you with enough information so that you can go back and check and double check the resources and then do with the information whatever you please. So I just said, okay, I'll do a part 3 where I focus specifically on politics, and then I'll do a part 4, science as a weapon, where we can close it all out, and then I will do that live Q&A that I told you guys about before. So fret not. I'm going to get it all said and done, but there's a lot to say and there's a lot to cover. And this is a very, the great and dreadful day, as I have said continuously. Great if you are focusing on your mental and emotional and spiritual prowess. If you are focused internally, dreadful if you are caught up in the ways of this world, and if you are waiting for anyone outside of you to do for you what you can and should be doing for yourself. So that's what we're going to talk about. I titled this video White Lives Matter more than anything because I needed to have a topic that, subject that grabs you. And that also is in alignment with what I want to talk about today. We're specifically going to talk about the spiritual ramifications of this world that we are living in, which has been created and produced for the most part by capitalism and by racism, white supremacy, and I'm going to talk about that title a little bit later. But this world that we live in has absolutely been built and created by Europeans. So hashtag Karen, hashtag Trump, and hashtag white America were the original subjects that I wanted to put in the topic line. But in order to just kind of simplify it and wrap everything up into a short, simple title, and to grab people that may be interested in I wonder what she's talking about. That's why I use the title White Lives Matter. And just a little caveat, isn't it interesting when you hear or someone say, or you read White Lives Matter, how preposterous it is? It's like, oh, we know White Lives Matter. You don't need to say that. Everybody knows White Lives Matter. You don't need to say that. Now juxtapose the concept of Black Lives Matter, which is basically us trying to show the world or prove to the world that our lives actually matter. I mean, if you think about those two different things and the energy that comes behind the statement, White Lives Matter, to which everybody automatically pivots and says, duh, we all know that, there's no reason to say that. And then when we turn around and say Black Lives Matter, and then people scatter to their different parts of the world, or the energy that is behind that name, that title, is seeking validation, is seeking understanding, is seeking permission for us to be ourselves and live our highest and best lives. And I know that everybody who uses the term Black Lives Matter is not using it from those different perspectives. But again, once you identify with these names and these ideologies, you tether yourself with the intention of what those concepts and ideologies are. So White Lives Matter. I'm going to break that down in just a minute. White people, you are absolutely 100% under divine judgment. And I'm talking specifically to white people in America, but Europeans all across the country. But as we know, Black people in America, Africans in America, we have been living amongst the worst of the worst, if you will. When Europe sent, you know, their explorers, if that's the right title for me to use, to America in order to create this nation. They sent rapists, they sent robbers, they sent criminals, they sent the worst of the worst from their particular, you know, lineage, society, or whatever, here to establish this nation. So this is why now America, you know, whether we talk about having the highest percentage of prisoners, or, you know, the number of people in poverty, homelessness, you know, domestic violence, rape, child abuse, pedophilia, you know, black on black crime, white on white crime, Hispanic on Hispanic crime, gangs, you know, the worst elements that we can think of are present in this country. And that's not to say that there isn't those things in other countries around the world, because of course we know that they are. But America, you got a special energy and focus and intention on you right now. And white America in particular, you are most certainly under divine judgment. And I'm going to get into that and how that's playing itself out. Let me start by saying real quick, thank you to everyone who has watched my videos as of late. I know and understand that this particular topic is not really something that I've been addressing intentionally as of late. So I know that I'm going to get viewers that normally don't necessarily tune into my videos. I'll probably get, you know, people kicking up in my dust in my comments, especially when you talk about politics. It always is amazing to me how, you know, vehemently angry Black people in particular get when we start talking about politics. It's fascinating to me, and I'll get into that in just a minute. But I also know that, you know, I'll probably have maybe some, you know, white people that want to feel supreme about themselves, maybe some bigots, some racists, and just people who may not be used to hearing people talk about the political arena and about race and about what's happening right now in the world from a spiritual perspective. So I welcome all of you, and I just want to give you a, let you know that my perspective on everything is always coming from a spiritual perspective. I'm not a religious person, but I respect all religions, all cultures, all ethnicities, and their right to practice their faith, however they deem fit, right? But my vantage point is going to be coming from a spiritual perspective, and it is not, you know, a holier than thou or a dogmatic religious perspective. I am an avid student of history. I studied African culture and African history, have been studying it my entire life. I studied European history for 2.5 years in college. I just went on a binge of studying European history, trying to figure out how these people became so worldly dominant. And I took classes that really didn't have anything to do with my specific major. It was purely based out of, you know, my inquisitive nature. Right. So did I say 2.5 years? Maybe it wasn't 2.5 years, maybe 1.5 years. I don't even remember how many classes it was, but I'm basically saying that I spent a lot of time trying to study and understand European history to figure out, you know, what brought about slavery and how we got to this point right now where the minority on our planet could actually be in control in the way that they are. So I welcome you. I welcome people who disagree with me. You don't have to agree with everything that I say. What I do ask is that you be respectful. I don't do the mudslinging and all that crazy talk and all that stuff in my comments. I'll just delete it and block you. But if you have a varying opinion and you want to address it, or maybe I made a mistake in something I said, I'm always open to correction. Or maybe I left out information that I forgot. Last video I said what was the dude's name? I said that the guy, Jim Jones, took all those people down to Africa. I quoted myself, or I misspoke. It was actually New Guinea. And I had some of my, you know, beautiful followers to correct me and to, you know, keep me on track. So I welcome that. And again, if I say anything that, is out of, it's not factual, then I welcome, you guys to correct me, and also to, to help me with my rounded perspective. Let me just get something out the way real quick. I am a biracial woman who identifies as Black. My biological mother is white. My father is Black. So I know that whenever I talk about things like this, you guys probably don't know this, but I have internet stalkers that have been following me for probably 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 years now, that like to wait for me to discuss certain things, or certain topics to come up, where they try to, jump on and, try to use words and language and energy to hurt me. We are beyond that at this point. I am not seeking validation from anyone, and I am not seeking permission from anyone to identify myself the way that I identify myself. I am very secure with who I am. I know who I am. So I welcome, or you have my permission to have a conversation about, whether or not you agree with the fact that mixed people can actually identify as Black, or whether you think I'm Black or I have the power to talk to Black people as a Black woman, just not on my page. Okay. So that's my position on it. I said what I said, and it is what it is. And if you have an issue with me being mixed and speaking about what I'm speaking about, then we could just pause for the cause right now. And you can quite simply press pause on this video, or click that little X button and go move to a platform that makes you feel better about however you see the world and your perspective. Okay. What else? There's a couple of things before I wanted to say before I started talking. Today, the announcement, actually, I'll get to that because it's in my presentation, so I won't. Let me just get on track. So the thing I wanted to start out with, for the white people that are going to watch this, and for all of us to watch this, is we have to understand the timeline of what's taking place right now on our planet, and the spiritual significance of what's taking place. So just from a historical standpoint, there are several different explanations of how white people, or the white race, came to be. And I'm going to say this purely from a historic perspective, from white scientists as well as African scholars, just so we can put this on the table, so we can fast forward to where we are in 2020, in this moment in time, where America is literally in the middle of a civil war with Black versus white. And then white people are at a civil war with each other as well. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit. But basically, there are various explanations of, what came to be. The most common understanding or explanation is that, Lucy, who is credited with being the first woman, the first fully formed human being, if you will, Homo sapien sapien, if you into anthropology. She was the link in the chain, so to speak, to explain how we went from monkeys or apes or Neanderthals to actual human beings. So they say that Lucy was the first actual, human being of African descent. And she was the mother to all civilization. Now, I personally do not believe that explanation, only because I do not believe in the process of evolution as it has been told by scientists of this world, Darwinism, natural selection, which basically is a scientific way of saying that Europeans were the final human species to evolve, and therefore are the highest and best and most equipped, or highest evolution of the human species, so to speak. That's what natural selection is. That's what Darwinism is. Now, yes, there's a lot of stuff that falls underneath that. It's not just about humanity. It's about mammals, and it's about other species of life. It's about the way the planet evolved. So there's a lot of layers in that, and I don't want to minimize. I do believe in the theory of evolution, because all things evolve, all things change, right? But as far as that connection between Homo sapiens sapiens, or Homo sapiens and Homo sapiens sapiens, there's a lot of things that are left to be questioned. And I used to challenge my anthropology professors, and anybody for that matter, because there's just a lot of missing links in that chain, so to speak. But to save you, or save you from boring you, I won't get into all of that. But this Lucy was the mother of all humanity, according to this theory, and from her came all of humanity as we know it. And obviously African people, being in Africa, were, you know, the first original people, and then some of those people migrated up to Europe, and based on the, you know, the weather and the environment there, it changed the phenotypes of those people. And I'm not saying I believe this, I'm giving you guys just a little bit background of what, you know, history and science and anthropology and geneticists and all of this, that what we're teaching, and this is part of the theology or the ideology that has shaped this world, so to speak, right? So those people went up into Europe based on climate and, you know, a bunch of different factors. They started to get lighter, their skins, you know, their noses and lips started to change, the hair changed based on the environment. Then they crossed the Bering Straits and ended up in America, in a bunch of different places in the world. That's one explanation. And that is the predominant accepted, right, explanation when it comes to world history, scientists, etc. Then there is also the theory of albinos, who it is said that, you know, in Africa, albinos were considered to be mutants, and then they were kicked out of Africa and they went to Europe and started their own culture, their own, you know, tribal element, if you will, and just became a different people through that same process of the earth, evolution, you know, climate, et cetera, and that's how the European race came to be. And because they were kicked out of Africa, that created, you know, the hatred or the envy or the, you know, that, and as well as the harsh conditions in Africa, which obviously, you know, people who are not melanated have a harder time adjusting to. So that is one of the explanations of why, you know, the European race has gone to world war with the melanated people of the world, as well as with nature and God. There is, the Yakub theory, which Elijah Muhammad brought to us and said that basically one of our gods, one of the gods actually went and created, using science and using science and as a geneticist, that he was studying the original man and woman, and that he found that there were two separate germs, or two separate, what's the word for it? Two germs, that's the word that they use, right? A brown germ and a black germ, original germ and a lighter germ, that if pulled out could be grafted in creating a new race. So it is alleged or said that Yakub actually, once he saw that there were two people inside of the original man and woman, he scientifically went in and pulled out the other race in order to create a race of people that was going to rule the earth for a certain point in time. I'm only giving all of this for context. I'm not saying that I believe in any of it or that I believe in all of it. I'll keep my specific perspective about it to myself for now, just because some of this stuff you can trace it. You can look back at the history, you can look at the science, but there's just a lot of stuff that we just can't prove. I don't like to argue points that I can't prove. You know what I'm saying? So we can all agree that the European race is the youngest race on our planet. And we can all agree that the European race right now is in control of this planet. And when I say meaning control, I mean Europeans are making the decisions about where you can go, you know, getting on a plane and going from here to Africa. You can't just get on a plane and go from here to Africa. You have to get a United States passport or a UK passport or a South America passport or a China passport, right? So there are laws and regulations that have been set up along with the IMF, right? Along with the CDC, along with all of the other branches of government and of world institutions that are absolutely 100% controlling our planet. So while we, Black people, Indigenous people, African people, outnumber Europeans 13-1, it's been 13-1 for a long time. I'm pretty sure that number's probably higher than that, but we'll go with 13-1. While we do outnumber Europeans, numbers-wise, they seem to have control of our planet. And I say that tongue-in-cheek because the world that we have known it as is expiring and is ending. And the prophecies that our ancestors talked about, Indigenous, Native American, African prophecies, there were prophecies that were told that a people were going to come on our planet and were going to rule for a specific amount of time in order for us to see what was lying dormant or what we were capable of. Now, I don't believe that, you know, the European race or, you know, this power structure that we know it as of now was only meant for that purpose. I remember watching a video by Abdul-Allah, I think his name was, and he was talking about how, you know, the focus on technology, right, and the world that we have built now only could have been built by Europeans, because we as a people would never have gone around the world and raped the natural resources or expanded the natural resources the way that they have to create computers, to create televisions, to create, you know, the higher forms of technology that we have now. So all things work for the greater good, right? I got to a point in my understanding where I couldn't get past slavery because I was like, what kind of God, you know what I'm saying, would allow for this to happen? I can't get past the fact that these people took my people off boats, that like, it was a very frustrating thing for me to understand. But once I stopped looking at it from my limited vantage point and started looking at it through the mind of God, it made perfect sense to me. Basically, it, you know, from my perspective, we've gone through a 400+ year, 500 year, depending on where you start time at, purging process in order for us to recognize and to acknowledge the higher and the lower self, right? Lower self has to make manifest, recognize the higher and the lower self, and then move into the concept of supreme beings. And that's where we are right now. So when you see the UFOs and all of the talk about unidentified flying objects and, you know, the problem is, you know, our culture thinks that there's little green men with big eyes on those ships. And I just don't, they're not little green men with big eyes. They're supreme beings. You know what I mean? And it would be very irrational and foolish of us, all of us, no matter what race you are, to think that out of all the galaxies that are in the universe, or the universes in the galaxies, however you look at it, that we are actually here alone. No, we are not. And there are supreme beings that are among us that are aware of the times that we live in, that are guiding things that are happening on this planet, but they are also limited in their intervention because we have free will. And when it all boils down to it, Earth is a school. Our souls come here to have certain experiences, to grow and expand in consciousness. I won't get into all of that because I don't want to lose you guys, and I definitely don't want the purity or the simplification of what I'm trying to say to get lost on, you know, in me going all over the planet. So I won't do that. But I do want to emphasize the point that dissatisfaction brings change. And we right now in the year 2020 are at the height of dissatisfaction, not just Black people, not just, you know, all of the cultures of the world, white people, everybody. And so when I talk about divine judgment, you know, white people are living through their own divine judgment, their own mirror, so to speak. So like when I've been in the videos talking about, you know, the promiscuity and the over sexualization of Black women, well, that's part of our judgment as Black women, as a culture, specifically because we, you know, our people are closest to the Creator when it comes to the order of things, right? That just means that we have a higher responsibility. We feel downtrodden and we feel like we're at the bottom of the pyramid, so to speak. But that's because you're looking at the world through the lens of man. When you look at the world through the lens of God, you understand that we are the original descendants and the children of God, which means that the accountability and the responsibility for us is higher. That is why we are suffering more. Not because white people are superior, not because they're undefeatable, not because of some curse of Ham or any of that we being a cursed people. No, we are the original children and descendants of the Creator, which means that our accountability and responsibility is higher. Any parent knows your first child always has the higher burden to carry, right? So the Lord self-made manifest to perfect the wobble in its nature, meaning God saw something in itself. And when I say itself, I'm talking about awareness and consciousness that manifests itself as the original man and woman, standing outside of self, viewing self, studying self, and recognizing that there is a lower nature that, if not brought under control, can and will rule you instead of us being masters of self, right? So here we have that made manifest through the European race and what has happened on this planet. History doesn't lie. You can argue with the history, and that doesn't mean that everybody watching this, white people that watch this, doesn't mean that you know, were here when King Leopold was here cutting off arms and legs in the Congo, and you know what I'm saying, or among white devils who were cutting off tongues and cutting off penises and lynching Black men during the 1920s and 30s. No, that's not what I'm saying. And I am not in any way a purveyor of making white people feel guilty to act, because that guilt that you move with, so you need to stop shaming people to joining our organizations, shaming people to wanting to help us, because if they come amongst us with that guilt or that shameful type of energy, then it will be counterproductive to anything that we are trying to accomplish. So we need people of the white race or European race that actually have righteous, good intention, that are not coming amongst us clamoring for our acceptance, people that can stand strong on their own square, who know who they are and are not looking for us to validate them. Those are the type of people that we need to be aligned with, because moving forward, this is not so much about race as it is about frequency and energy moving forward. But right now, in the thick of where we are, the higher and lower self is manifesting itself through the races and through this, you know, the spiritual war is playing itself out through the race concept, right? Now, when we die, my soul's not Black. My soul's not white. My soul is consciousness, energy, and awareness, right? But it carries the memories of the experiences that I have lived while being in this physical body. This is my understanding, right? So there is a higher state of consciousness that goes beyond race. That's when we start evolving beyond just the physical aspect, right? This is what we're moving into. But we also can't be so spiritually haughty or high-minded that we don't respect the physical lessons that are taking place. So race is a very, 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 very big part of the lessons that we are experiencing while we are here on this planet. And I'll do maybe some other videos and talk specifically about that. Again, I'm not trying to be all over the place. I want to be clear and concise in the things that I have to say. So maybe another day, or when we do the question and answer, you want to get more information, just ask me about that then, and then we can build on it more then. All right. I am not a Black supremacist. I believe with all of my heart that the kingdom of God is going to be ushered in specifically by Black people, and Black people in America have been through a specific cultivation in order for us to be prepared for that. But it's only going to be a very small percentage of us here, as well as a small percentage of people all over the world that are going to qualify for the kingdom of God. I'm not talking about pearly white gates in the clouds in heaven. I'm talking about a new world order, quote unquote, from a spiritually based perspective where righteousness is what's going to govern our planet. The people who are going to qualify for the kingdom of God are going to have to be self-ruled by righteousness. So if we are talking about being self-ruled, then the concept of democracy and governments ruling over us is a misnomer. And this is the reality of what we're experiencing right now. That's being undone. The idea of you having to wait for the government to do for you what you could or should be doing for yourself. The idea that the only way that we can maintain civilizations and societies is through government. That concept and ideology is being destroyed. And if you don't believe me, you're not paying attention to what's happening on an economic front in this economy. The United States government is currently printing checks, writing checks all over the place, handing out money as a result of the experiences through COVID-19. There's going to be ramifications that are going to take place, and we're going to be facing them in 2021. Now, I'm saying all of this, but I just want to reiterate to you, specifically to my people, because while this is about White Lives Matter, I'm speaking to melanated people around the world. There is absolutely no reason to be afraid right now. This is a great and dreadful day. Great if you are in alignment with the understanding of God. Dreadful if you are holding on to this world and trying to keep some semblance of normalcy as it pertains to the way that we've been living, because there's nothing normal about millions and millions of people living unsatisfied, mediocre, and miserable lives in debt, right? Slaves to debt, slaves to living vicariously through other people, slaves to this concept that women are inferior, or even the whole idea of women having to fight for equality. I'm not fighting for shit. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm not fighting against anything, because whatever you fight against, you give your power. It's another conversation for another day. I know you guys are going to feel some type of way about that. I'm 100% okay with that. I can explain that more in detail, but for the sake of our conversation, I want to get into this presentation. But I'm not a Black supremacist, meaning that I'm trying to be, or I want my people in a position to do to white people what they have done to us. We will fail at that every single time. That is not our nature. It is not who we are. And the only way for us to come back to the center and to build a kingdom of God, which is ruled righteously, where all races that live amongst us can live in peace and have a high quality of life, is to undo the programming that the system of racism and white supremacy has done to us, and go back into the mindset and the energy and the consciousness and awareness of God. Okay? So, let's see, should I start with this? Well, I'll read this in just a second. Let me get started on my presentation. I'm going to share my screen with you guys. Hopefully everything comes across clear. And again, I will put up that I'm going to do part 4, The Gods Are at War, Science as a Weapon, later when it, I'll put it together so that it can be cohesive and that, it will be received in the right spirit. So let me pull up my keynote. And I'm going to be toggling back and forth because I have some videos that I want to show that will come straight from the internet that I couldn't put into my presentation. So just bear with me as I move back and forth through these screens. So the Gods Are at War Part 3, White Lives Matter, hashtag Karen, hashtag Trump, and hashtag White America. Let's get started. The first thing I want to say, today there was a, release that Breonna Taylor's, you guys know, and I don't need to reinvent the wheel, so to speak. They're only going to be charging the officer for basically firing the gun off and hitting, shooting into the other apartment opposed to Breonna Taylor's apartment. I don't need to reiterate the frustration or the anger that I know my people are feeling. What I will say to Breonna Taylor's family and to all of the brothers and sisters that are at the forefront, meaning having lost their lives, the George Floyds, the Jacob Blakes, back to Trayvon Martin, back to Michael Garner, back to all the brothers and sisters that have kind of been the faces, so to speak, of, us fighting for oppression and fighting against racism and police brutality. Like I said before, dissatisfaction brings change. And Breonna Taylor she is another link in the chain, and another, element, so to speak, that is going to bring the weight of the universe and the creator down on this country. Now, the question for Black people is, are we going to be caught up in it? Or are we going to prepare ourselves and be in alignment with an energy that's going to help us to navigate that situation? But Louisville, Kentucky, I saw a post that said that 2 police officers have been shot. I just want to tell my people, be very, 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 very careful about how you move right now, because there is a systematic war that is happening behind the scenes that you are not aware of. And they are using the killings of police officers, or the officers killing our people, as well as the retaliations. They are using this to implement this race war, and it's not what you think it is. And again, I'll get into this a little bit more when I have a chance to actually have a separate conversation about this. But Breonna Taylor's life most definitely is not in vain. It's a lot I want to say about this, but I want to try to stay on the subject. But I do want to acknowledge her legacy and her memory. I haven't really been talking about the killings as of late. For one, because I spent so much time focusing on, police killings of Black people. For, when I was doing radio and when I was traveling across the country, I was 100% focused on making sure we kept their spirit alive, their energy alive, that we focused on knowing the names, that we stayed ahead of the curve as far as the people. When I started to look at this from a spiritual perspective, I recognized how counterproductive it is for us to be fighting against what we don't want, or to be focusing our energy and emphasis on the things that make us feel trauma, that make us feel pain, that make us feel angry and upset. So in no way am I not cognizant or aware of what's going on. I just have a different type of accountability and responsibility in the way that I approach things. And in order for me to be in righteous alignment with myself, I only speak about these things when it's in alignment with who I really am. So rest in power to Queen Breonna Taylor. I know she is among us as an ancestor now. And I also know that her life and her death will be very instrumental in helping us to move the ball forward as far as getting justice, divine justice, not the white man's justice, but divine justice from the universe and from the ancestors and from the creator, who is very, who are all of that energy, all of that awareness is very conscientious about what's happening on our planet right now. I also want to pay homage to the legacy of Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. And you guys know I'm not home, but my homegirl definitely has this book along with a couple of my books. So when I need to use them for the science as a weapon, specifically, I will have my book here until I get a new, I'm waiting on a new order. But I want to say, I've been very disheartened to see so many celebrities in particular and politicians talk about this idea of racism, white supremacy, and not pay homage or not even know about this book. If you don't know about the teachings and the workings of Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, I'm not really sure how informed you are about the depths of racism and white supremacy and the psychological implications of, you know, white people being the minority on this planet and fearing genetic annihilation, which is what a lot of this, most of this is actually about, as well as when I say the gods are at war, I'm going to show you guys a pyramid in just a second of, you know, white supremacy, so to speak. The people at the top of the pyramid understand that there was only a certain amount of time for these people to rule. And so they are basically creating weapons, creating devices, creating a lot of, you know, turning nature against itself, so to speak, to try to maintain their rule, but they're also thumbing their nose up at God. You know what I mean? Saying, okay, if God is real, then why would you allow me to create a major hole in the ozone layer in order to, you know, create wars, which they absolutely 100% have the power to do. And I will get into that as in science as a weapon. But they're basically thumbing their nose up at the creator and basically wanting to prove God, but at the same time, go out with a bang. I think it was Elijah Muhammad that said that the white man would destroy the planet before he actually ever gave up his rule. Well, that is what is happening right now. So I think I made this point. Maybe I didn't though, because I'm looking at my notes, you guys. So when I said I'm not a Black supremacist, my focus and interest is on peace and prosperity, right? So I understand that we have to destroy to rebuild. I understand that sometimes war is necessary. I understand that God, you know, I'm talking about higher and lower self of the creator. So obviously, if you've ever seen a lion kill a gazelle, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's God in action. That is God, the creator, expressing itself in the physical realm. So lightness and darkness, higher and lower self, right? Masculine and feminine, there's duality in everything. So in no way am I one of these, you know, spiritual yogis that think that it's supposed to be all love, peace, and harmony. No, you know, but we are moving toward a place where that is going to be our reality. And if you can't even visualize that, then you won't be able to live and maintain in that type of reality, right? So I say I'm for peace and prosperity. I love my people. I absolutely love, you know, nature, the planet, the universe. And my job is to give information, give facts with love, with righteous intention, with the mindset of the matriarch, with the mindset of the queen, with the mindset of the goddess, with the mindset of a ruler, right? And then we can take that information and scatter it in whatever our perspective role is, whether you a soldier in the streets, or whether you are a homemaker, or whether you are, you know, a parent just focusing on your seeds, or whether you're in the community as a street soldier, or whether you are, you know, a mathematician, scientist, whatever. Take this information and apply it to your specific world, right? But I do not believe in Black people turning into white people for retribution. That is not our way. If we plan on being the purveyors of a kingdom of God, so to speak, then we have to go back to the way of God, which is balance, which is righteousness, and operating from the mind and heart cohesion. Okay, so let me move myself so you guys can see. Oh, can I move? Wait a minute. Can I move my screen? Okay, yeah, there we go. All right, so it's my little homemade white supremacy pyramid, right? This is just showing us that there's layers to this concept of what we call racism, white supremacy, right? At the bottom of the pyramid, you have your average white American citizen. And then a step above that, you have the KKK. And I say KKK only to emphasize the point that, you know, these people, KKK, And, I'm not talking about hooded, masked men. I'm talking about people who believe that the white race is superior and will do anything to implement that ideology. So they may not identify as KKK. They may just be regular teachers at a random school, but are still moving and operating as if white people are superior and teaching children based on that, or passing laws based on that, or providing funding based on that, etc. So you can call it the KKK, or you can just call it purveyors of racism, white supremacy. So the next level up, you have the KKK, the legal system, which would be police and lawyers. You have the medical system, which would be doctors, people in positions of power in the prison system, education, etc. So these are people that have some semblance of decision-making within, this society, that are white, that are purveyors of white supremacy, or at least white people being entitled and having the main positions of power. Above that, you have, again, KKK, or judges, politicians, bankers, the scientists in positions of power and government, or the hidden hand. And then above that, you have the Jeff Bezos, the Warren Buffetts, the Bill Gates of the world, right? And I just specifically mentioned them because they are, setters of culture, setters of information. Just the fact that Bill Gates, that CNN is actually showing us what Bill Gates thinks about anything, just because this dude has a lot of money. Donald Trump, if nobody else has proven that you can have a lot of money and still be an idiot. So why is CNN and MSNBC and these other media junkets constantly advocating for or validating what Bill Gates thinks about anything? Who is Bill Gates? Warren Buffett, obviously, he's been at the forefront as far as economics is concerned, and has made a lot of money and has been very successful. But why do we care what Warren Buffett thinks about social issues? What makes him a purveyor of culture or consciousness, right? And then above that, at the very, very top of the pyramid, you have the people that are in real power. If you watch the documentary, The Committee of 300, I think it's on YouTube. It's probably taken down now because YouTube is doing major censoring at this point. But that's the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, what they call the Illuminati, the people who are actually implementing the things that we don't really even know about. Most people don't even think about. This is at the very tip of the pyramid, right? Now, these positions are interchangeable, meaning an average white American citizen, if they are in alignment, if they are, aware and conscious of their race and what they, that behind the scenes focus or intention, right? And if they go through the legal system, whether it be through law, and then eventually become judges or politicians, or maybe eventually become well off financially, right? You can move up the pyramid. So these things are interchangeable. So, there are some average white American citizens that have absolutely no idea with what the hell is going on. They probably look at this pyramid and think I'm crazy. You know what I'm saying? They have no awareness of the hand beneath the seat, right? The power behind the power, right? The population control agenda, the fact that there are monuments right in Georgia that say that there is a global plan to cut the population, the human population, by billions of people. There's a lot of white people that have absolutely no idea about any of this stuff. Let's be clear, that are ignorant, or that just don't know, that are focusing on, like the rest of us, just like the same way there's a lot of Black people that don't know, Asians, Latinos, etc., right? But these positions are interchangeable, and that is the benefit of being white in a world that has been ruled by racism, white supremacy. Now, at the top of this pyramid, there are no Black faces, no Obamas, right? So Obama, while he had to have kissed the ring in order to become president, Obama was never at this top of the pyramid. He was being used as a pawn, as are all of the presidents, to fulfill an agenda. And I'm going to get into that in a second, so Don't get all in your feelings yet. Just please listen to me and allow me to paint this landscape so I can bring this all full circle. All right. So Pat Buchanan, he's been on all of the, he's frequented CNN, Fox News, all of that. You should know who Pat Buchanan is. He's one of the go-to guys when it comes to, white cultural awareness, consciousness, political arena, agenda, etc. He wrote a book called The Death of the West: How Dying Populations and Immigrant Invasions Imperil Our Country and Civilization. And in this book, Pat Buchanan basically talked about the fact that the statistics of white people are dying at a rate that they are not replenishing themselves. So there is, and again, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing talked about this in the ISIS paper, Fear of White Genetic Annihilation, that all of the other races are genetically superior to Europeans, and the black man in particular, black man and woman, are the most superior, only genetically, only because if you mate with someone of a different race, they will actually, that dominant gene will become the dominant force in the creation of the child. That's where biracial children come in. So black, white creates black mix, which is automatically going to be identified as black, et cetera, et cetera. So Pat Buchanan and a lot of the, the people who are monitoring this stuff, they are very concerned about the statistics of white people, and that white people are soon going to become a minority in America and in Europe, but they are also aware that white people are already a minority on a global level. They don't like to say it, right? But they are. So this is an underlying agenda. Remember the pyramid, right? At the top, very top of the pyramid, this is not their concern. But as you go down the rungs of the pyramid, and at that very top of the pyramid, they are very much elitist and not really concerned, not only for black people or other races, but they don't care about most white people either. Their pure concern is domination, world domination, and control, right? But in those lower rungs of the pyramid, there are a lot of white people in positions of power that are very concerned about the statistics of white people, how much they are giving birth, the statistics of white males. And there's a lot of information about there. I've talked about this in my videos before, but we as a people have to stay cognizant. The war, the spiritual war that I talked about, the mental war, the emotional war, the spiritual war, the physical war, there's a lot of layers to this. And if we're just sitting back talking about vote or die, or focusing on voting for the same people that are all a part of this war, right? You never hear Pat Buchanan come on Fox News and tell black people that you're wasting your time voting, that you don't have any. He would never say that. Does he think that? Of course he does. Read the book. You know what I'm saying? So again, levels and layers to this war that we have to be cognizant and conscious of. So this is from a previous campaign of, let me see if I can move myself. Well, I guess I'm okay right there. Do you want to live? Vote or die, right? And you can see 50 Cent and Paris and Mary J. Blige and Diddy, and I think that's Maya, the singer, with the vote or die. This was a campaign from a few years back, I want to say when Obama got in office. And I take issue with this, and you guys know I've been consistently talking about our language and these very low vibrational affirmations. Vote or die is a very low vibration affirmation or command or suggestion or advice, right? The idea that if you don't vote, that your life will end. Or just the seriousness and the intentional focus on this one particular subject. When have we ever said protect black women or die? When have we ever said protect black children or die? When have we ever said protect black culture or die? Protect black history, right? You know what I'm saying? So if you read the Bible and the Quran, you know that the only way that Satan actually has power is through your consent. You have to agree You have to oblige, right? So I'm not saying that voting gives your consent. Satan can't do anything without your consent. Your fear is your consent. So while we're all, stirred up about vaccinations, right? Don't get the vaccine. They're going to try to kill you. It's all, it's propaganda or it's population control. The fear is already your consent, whether you get the shot or not. So your fear about what's going to happen with this election, you are already co-signing Satan. Fear is anti-God. People say, well, you should fear God, or God is a jealous God. That doesn't even make sense. I never believed that. And I'm not saying there's not some symbolic reasoning for that. When we talk about God, we're really talking about our inner consciousness and the way we see ourselves. You fear your highest potential. You fear not living up to your potential. That's anti-God, because he's given you, it's given you, we've given you, however you want to conceive it, right? Everything you need to be successful and to be your highest and best self. So this idea now that if we don't vote, that we're somehow wronging our people, or we're not living up to our ancestors' hopes and dreams, or we're, making the situation worse, or we're the problem. Satan cannot do anything without your consent. Anybody pushing fear-based propaganda, celebrity, politician, medicine, medical doctors, scientists, spiritual gurus, writers, health clinicians, anybody in any aspect of this society, anybody pushing fear is anti-God. Not knowingly, not consciously. I'm going to show you guys some slides a little bit later to kind of reiterate the point of what I'm saying. And I have my meditation music on in the background to bring me back to where I want to be. A couple of people asked me about my music that I was playing in the other video. I'll just show you guys this. This is 432 hertz. And, I listen to meditation music when I fall asleep. So it'll bring me back to, because I'm working on, delivering my messages in a way that, are palatable for everybody that I'm trying to reach. And, when I get fired up, if I need to get fired up too, that's cool. But fear is your consent. So anybody, leader, black, white, or otherwise, that is providing content or information that makes you fear, turn that shit off immediately. You cannot use Satan's system to bring in God's kingdom. Can I move myself? It's cut off a little bit here. Oh, let me see if I can move me. Damn it. I can't see my, my little mouse is not on here, so I can't see how okay, let's see if I can move it. Okay, here we go. You cannot use Satan's system to bring in God's kingdom, kingdom. Democracy, as we know it, was started in Greece, maybe Rome, depending on your concept of your period of history, right? Really Greece. But nowhere on the face of the planet has it been proven that democracy can bring justice to the multitudes of people. It is a subset of the monarchy, which was actually started in Europe, right? Not a monarchy that was started in Europe. The concept of government in Europe, right? So our idea of government now, our idea of democracy now has not served our best interests and God's agenda to date at all. You say, well, there's things that we can point to where it's been beneficial. I hear people say a lot, Barack Obama, right? he brought the healthcare plan into fruition. They fought him tooth and nail, right? Which is actually good and very admirable. His intention of what he tried to do and the outcome of it, even though, it's being undone. But here's the thing. You don't need healthcare when you take care of yourself. In God's kingdom, people conscientiously focus on taking care of themselves, their well-being, right? So we don't have to clamor and fight for healthcare, the things that we should naturally have access to. In a righteous world, we wouldn't be fighting over whether poor people or disenfranchised people actually had health care. We don't live in a righteous world, right? But we need to undo or retrain ourselves in the way that we think about this system. You cannot use Satan's system to bring in God's kingdom. The system of government that is present in the United States, the Constitution that is written in the blood of slavery, right? And all of those devils that actually signed that document that I hear all these people touting about like it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. This is Satan's system. Now, yes, we are living here, so we pay taxes, we are citizens, so we want to utilize the tools that we have in order to move the momentum forward. But it's like now we're talking about Trump versus Biden. Well, it's the lesser of two evils. I don't want to vote for the lesser of two evils. I don't even bear witness to that kind of language. I'm going to vote for lesser of two evils. So I'm saying that I'm going to vote for I'm going to vote for evil. And I'm not telling people not to vote. Stay with me because I'm going to make a point. I'm going to bring this all home. Don't get in your feelings. But you cannot use Satan's system to bring in God's kingdom. The world that we want to come into fruition, the world that we want to see where everybody gets taken care of, everybody has health care, everybody has the basic elements of humanity, is not going to be ushered in by the United States government. I would think that by now we would have enough proof for that. But I just want to make sure I say that. And again, I'm not a religious person. I'm using language from the Bible because, and even from the Quran, because people, it's a focal point that we all can kind of go to a certain place where we understand. But there's been plenty of history throughout the ages that will, verify the concept of good and evil and, wicked rulers coming among us for a certain amount of time to rule. But I just want to make sure that I say that, and I'm going to back this up in just a second. There's an image on this slide, and I don't know why it's not showing. So let me hang on just a second. Make sure what's up here. I don't know why this image is not showing up. But speaking of Satan's system, I ended off the other video kind of talking about this a little bit. Cardi B talks police brutality, COVID-19 in the 2020 election with Joe Biden. Look, this is not about Cardi B. And I want to make sure I say that because y'all get attached to the person and miss the lesson or the message. This is not about Cardi B. This is about programming and how these people hoodwink you to make you think one thing when it's really another. Never in the annals of history have we had our culture be so defined. And I'm not just talking about Black hip hop culture, rap culture. I'm talking about world culture, right? When a former stripper and a current stripper, for all intents and purposes, she may be a rapper, but she absolutely 100% is still a stripper in my mind, is sitting down with a head of state. And you actually think that we are making progress as women or as a culture when there are thousands of women that are actually qualified to sit down and have this conversation, that are government service people, or that are spiritual people, or that are politicians. Of all the thousands of women in America that could have sat down and had this actual conversation, Elle, which is a white woman's magazine, high fashion, etc. This is a mind fuck. You understand what I'm saying? This is programming. On Time magazine, let me bring am I still sharing my screen? Okay, I'm still sharing my screen. Time magazine. Right now, we're in the peak of our presidential election, right? Everybody in the world is watching this. Time magazine is one of those magazines that is, once you make that magazine, it means that you've become acceptable to the broader culture. It means now that white children in suburban America know who you are. White suburban mothers and You know what I'm saying? Like, this is a different level of stamp of approval, Time magazine. It's not a regular magazine. This is a magazine that is very responsible for shaping consciousness and shaping culture. We are right now in the midst of still dealing with COVID-19, still dealing with all of the propaganda from that, people literally fearing for their lives, fearing for their well-being and their safety. And we're coming up on the most highly contested, emotionally charged presidential election of all time. And this is one of the people that they chose to represent our culture on this magazine. And I'm going to leave it at that, and I'll let you guys decide how you feel about that. This is the thing right here. And again, I still am talking about White Lives Matter, because we're talking about the election, the presidential election, and the facilitation of the government. No, I'm starting to sound like your boys off of In Living Color, fresh out the pen. So let me say this in a more simple way, right? We're talking about the United States government system and voting and the infrastructure of American culture, right? Time magazine is a white institution. Elle magazine is a white institution. Joe Biden is a white institution. The Democratic Party is a white institution. The Republican Party is a white institution. The Supreme Court is a white institution, right? And rest in peace to Ruth, who passed recently. And I'm seeing a lot of people get all involved in that conversation now. And it's just, is it important? Yes. Should it be our primary focus? Absolutely not. But to make my point, get your booty to the polls when the concubines start running the show. This is one of the most blatantly disrespectful things that I've ever seen in my life. And I'm just going to show you guys, because there's absolutely no way for me to say this without you seeing it. So I'm going to show the whole thing. And again, if you live in this environment, you cannot be cringe. This shouldn't be cringeworthy to you, because this is basically what our music is saying in the songs that we listen to consistently.
Get your booty to the pole, 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 yeah.
Do we get your attention? Good. So, you're really not gonna vote?
You know it's more than just the president on the ballot, right? Check it.
A district attorney decides who to prosecute,
including whether or not to go after dirty cops.
Do you know who elects the DA? We do, but you don't want to vote.
Can't make it rain if you locked up on some bullshit.
Want trades and coding taught in our schools? Then vote for the school boards that will prepare us for the job market.
Want to end cash bail? Well, then vote for the sheriffs and county officials that feel the same way you do.
But you talking about, they gonna pick who they gonna pick, shawty.
Ferguson just elected their first black mayor.
You know how that happened?
It's clear Black lives don't matter to some of our current elected officials.
If they matter to you, then don't let other people decide who's going to run your community. Get your booty to the poll. Get your booty to the poll. Get your booty to the poll.
Get your vote, stretch.
For information on how and where to vote, as well as resources to find out who's running where you live, go to getyourbootytothepoll.com.
To the poll, get your booty to the poll, get your booty to the poll, get your booty.
Hold on.
The title of it was Why Does Everybody Hate Anne Hathaway? Despite the fact that she just won an Oscar, she's been getting
Stop. How do I stop this?
so much angry scrutiny.
Probably just really insecure deep down.
And you try to shut it off, and I just couldn't.
This. What?
2 weeks later, he was sent to prison.
Okay. Oh, where do I start? I don't even know. This shit is embarrassing, bro. Like, for real, I don't even... Jamel Hill posted this, right? I'm going to read to you what she said. Atlanta exotic dancers encourage voting in new PSA. Up until Election Day on November 3rd, I am posting relevant, factual, and informative information related to voting. Today is National Voter Registration Day. This was yesterday. This video was put together by a group in Atlanta who decided that sometimes to get people to exercise their civic duty, you have to meet them where they are. They enlisted the talent of several of Atlanta's dance, blah, blah, fucking blah. Excuse my language. The fact that Jamel Hill actually posted this and tried to like start a serious conversation without pointing out the blatant stupidity and wait, okay, let me close this real quick. They actually have a website too, y'all. Get your booty to the pole. I don't know who's funding this. I don't know if these chicks decided to do this on their own. On the website, they're highlighting the strippers. I mean, I just, this is beyond embarrassing, bro. Let me take this. Let me just, Is this real? Is this real? If that is not a blatant slap in the face, I don't know what is. I think the video speaks for itself. I don't know who put them up to that, but I do know that when we talk about reprogramming or unprogramming the minds of our people, we need to start there. Because the fact that that our culture now is being led by women that actually think that let me just go to the next slide because the things that I have to say are not, it won't come out right. It won't come out right. Again, this is the society that we live in. This is America. And while white people should not take credit for the fuckery in our communities that we are exhibiting, and please excuse my language, but there is no other word. Let me just go back to my slide because I don't. Whew, I'll let y'all handle that one. I'll let y'all handle that one. So here we are now. This is how I recognize the programming, right? And yeah, that whole video just really threw me all the way off. And it makes me really want to, you know what I'm saying? How to recognize the programming, right? Right now, we're talking about the post office and voter suppression. Let me drink some water. We're always talking about voter suppression, right? I'm gonna show you guys something. Copy and paste this. I just took a screenshot when I put this in YouTube. And I'm going to bring up YouTube. Actually, I don't have to bring YouTube up. I just put the URL in. All right, so YouTube search post office voter suppression, right? And if you go through all the videos, right? Look at the subjects. Trump plainly admits plan to limit mail-in voting. The post office is the new battleground for Trump's war on mail-in voting. Trump's plan to sabotage the post office before the election. Voting by mail. Post office inspector general to probe changes to USPS. Trump attacks vote by mail and the U.S. postal system. USPS postmaster general hit with voter suppression allegations. Concern grows over postal service as Trump continues attack on mail-in voting. Postal services concerns over mail-in voting. President Trump says voting by mail is ripe with fraud. Congressman Peter Welch on the post office and voter suppression, right? If you look through all of these videos, this is the program. This is the programming to make you think that there is actually somebody in the way of you expressing your right and ability to vote. There's always a boogeyman, right? Mail-in ballots are vulnerable to fraud. Universal mail-in ballots threaten the integrity of our elections. You just keep going, and it keeps saying the same thing over and over and over and over. This is the program. And you know it's the program when you don't see anything that's giving you a different type of perspective. Now, let's put this in context. And it goes on and 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 on. And of course, the media is giving this a lot of attention because this is the program. So now let's take a look at this. Well, we got to start having discernment, because the war, the real war, bring myself back up real quick. The real war is for your mind, for your soul. It's not just about having you take vaccines. It's not just about who gets in office. This is all about controlling consciousness, controlling energy, and controlling souls. The war is for your soul. So you have to develop discernment in order to be able to recognize the program. So what's the program? This was from 2016, voter suppression by numbers, right? This was a big thing back in 2016 when Trump actually got elected. We all remember that. We don't need to go back through that. 4 years before that, in 2012, map of shame, vote suppression legislation by state. And it gives a color-coded representation of all of the states who were suppressing voters, whether it's through ID, whether it's through, not having access to the polls closing early, the usual song and dance. This is from 2008. Voter suppression, registration problems for white people, black people, Asians had issues, Democrats, Republicans, right? Wrong ID, all this different stuff, right? So you mean to tell me that, and I'm only going back to 2008, that was 12 years ago. In 12 years, we haven't made any headway on how to fix this problem. So here we are in 2020 now, worried about voter registration and voter suppression and long lines and mail-in ballots, right? They always create a boogeyman so that when they hoodwink you, you have somebody to blame. It's not just, damn, this system is fucked up. It's the voter registration. It's the Republicans. It's the people who closed the doors early and we didn't get, it's the fact that I didn't have my ID. They always give you somebody to focus on, so you're not really focusing on what is really happening. Who came up with defund the police? And I know this is an old concept, actually. This isn't a new concept. And I'm not gonna go through this because the same thing I just did when I searched defund police in YouTube, you can go and search defund police, scroll through all of the videos, right? And you'll be able to see the program figure out what the news media is saying, right? Figure out what is being mostly purveyed through social media and through the internet. That's how you figure out what the program is. The news media, CNN, NBC, Fox, there's a few others that escape my mind right now. They're never going to tell you what's really important or what's really happening behind the scenes, because they are in the business of programming. So when we talk about defunding the police, let me bring myself back up here. It's a program. Now, this is something that came from, this is not a new concept. This was a part of aspects of the civil rights movement, aspect of the feminist movement, right? So it's not a new concept, but it's being used right now as a program, whether some random Joe Blow started it or whether some high-level executive in the CIA started it, it doesn't matter. It's being used right now as a program, right? And the thing about it is, if we are going to, as a culture, really talk about defunding the police, then that means that we, as a people, have to step in immediately to be able to fill those positions that police fill in our communities. Otherwise, all these single women with these children are going to be left in these communities unprotected, right? And when they call the police to seek assistance and to seek help, who's actually going to be there to respond to them? If somebody breaks in my car, I'm calling the police. You know what I'm saying? And I don't want to minimize the importance, and I'm going to show a video of a brother explaining for balance, right, what the concept of defunding the police is. But I just want to, again, while we're looking through the lens of what's really happening here behind the scenes, the media is never going to focus on or highlight something that is really a part of the agenda. Excuse me.
When we say defund the police, there's a lot of people that like to frame it as an anarchist conversation. But what we know as black and brown bodies in this America is that policing never equated to safety for us. I've never felt protected or served by any officers in MPD or any of the other police forces and municipalities that I've visited across this America. So when we say defund the police, for people who cannot understand the nuances in that conversation, what we're saying is revisit public safety. Create systems that actually protect and serve, not just some, but all. Right now, policing in this America is disproportionately biased to affect black and brown bodies, to cage black and brown bodies, to harm black and brown bodies, but not to protect us. When we say defund the police, it means to revisit public safety systems in favor of a thing that translates to justice for all, not justice for some. When we say abolish, it's the understanding that police are funded with taxpayer dollars. Police stations stand up because of taxpayer dollars. They get new cruisers, shields, etc. because of taxpayer dollars. That means that they are a service. And they're a service that is answerable to us. If they're not answerable to us in the ways that we want, we can demand new service. And that's what this is. Abolish the police in favor of whatever that new service will be. Whatever that new service is that will deliver justice that the people decide on.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Where am I? Oh, here I am. Okay, so that was very well said by him. I don't have any I think that on paper, you know, it sounds really, really good. And I think that we should work towards taking our taxpayer dollars, pulling it away from the police institution, so to speak, and filtering it into public safety, mental health, right? Social services. There's a learning curve to that. That's not a tomorrow thing. That's not a 6 month from now thing. There's a learning curve to that. Those type of things, destroying certain aspects of the system and rebuilding them, that's a 4-year, 8-year, 10-year time trajectory. That's not a right now thing, right? So let's talk about that in the scope of what we're actually talking about, right? Because we still have right now needs in our communities. Not only that, why can't Black and brown people take the initiative to implement systems of public safety, to implement systems for justice for all, to implement systems where we can actually funnel our money, right, into our own communities to create those type of services that we're waiting for the government, waiting for local authorities, etc. Why can't we do those things and create those institutions in our own communities? And that doesn't take anything away from the fact that, yes, these are our taxpayer dollars that are actually supposed to go to these things, but our taxpayer dollars are supposed to go to potholes and clean water and basic necessities in our communities, and those things aren't being done either, right? So in Oakland, they have people that actually took the initiative and started filling the potholes themselves, right? Wearing masks and going out into the community and filling the potholes because local government wasn't doing it. They weren't like, wait a minute, my tax funds are being used for this. You need to get this done. And some people do that. But what I'm saying is, as we shift in this paradigm consciousness, we have to change the idea of waiting for people to do things for our communities that we actually could be and should be implementing ourselves. So defunding the police is a great strategic ideology. It's going to take some actual nurturing. It's going to take a committee, a think tank of Black and brown people to come together and actually talk about how that can actually implement it. But it's not a right now thing. It's not a this is going to happen tomorrow or next year thing. And I have a feeling that there's going to be a local government, and there already have been a few that are toying with this, that's going to completely take the police out of certain communities and leave those people to their own vices. I have a feeling that that's going to happen. And if and when it does happen, we will see how our people step up to rise to the occasion, which we should do, which I believe we are capable of doing, rise to the occasion in order to meet the needs and the necessities of those people. Are we doing that right now on a large scale? No. Small areas, we have, things that are happening, moving the ball forward, so to speak. But on a large scale, no, we are absolutely not doing that. And we are not proving that we can do that. We need to prove that we can do that at the same time that we are jockeying and rallying for defunding the police. Again, whatever the media is shining a spotlight on is for the Whatever the media is shining a spotlight on is for the purpose of programming, not to bring you truth. I had this slide in here because I wanted to talk about, and I'll talk about this briefly, but I want to speed myself up because I've been talking now, I think for an hour, maybe, or an hour and a half. This Derek Chauvin dude, there's something to this. And I have my own inclinations, right? But I just want to highlight the fact to white people and Black people, to all of us, that this dude was never caught and brought. There's no video footage of him being brought in. There's no real video footage where you can see this dude. There's cameras everywhere now, cameras in courtrooms. There's something to this murder and this devil that is more than what meets the eye. And I personally believe that Derek Chauvin was used in whatever capacity, whether it was a direct order, whether he was operating subconsciously from his programming, whether he was a victim of MK Ultra. I don't really know. But the case of George Floyd and what it manifested as a result took the attention away from COVID-19 and the lockdown and the quarantine, and the numbers were falling and the numbers were starting to stabilize. And now all of a sudden the country is in a full-fledged race pandemic, outcry, etc. There's something more to this. And I'm still looking into it, and I'm really still looking for how it's going to play out. But I need us to understand that there are agents of destruction that this government and world governments uses, hitmen, jackals, as John Perkins calls them in Confessions of an Economic Hitman. There are race soldiers. I've heard, who says that? Maybe Professor Small, somebody. Anyway, there are people that are being used to infiltrate or to bring about the desired effects that the people at the power, at the top of the pyramid and in the lower rungs at the top of the pyramid, to implement, you know, the New World Order, so to speak. And I believe that Derek Chauvin was one of them. When I talk about the New World Order, I'm talking about, let me bring myself up real quick. I'm going to speed through some of these next slides because, wait. Damn it, I hate this. Okay, here we go. Stop share. So the concept of the New World Order, basically where all of the world governments are supposed to be coming together at a specific time in world history and creating one monetary system, one financial system, which it's not far-fetched at this point when we're looking what's happening right now. Creating one monetary system and creating a one world government that will rule all people, right? So instead of, you know, America having its own government and Canada having its own government and Mexico having its own government and South America, et cetera, that all of these people are going to come together and create one world government, and that there are supposed to be a chain of events that is actually supposed to lead to this happening. 9/11 was the first link in the chain, so to speak. Well, one of many. And now what we're looking at right now, I mean, there's no better justification to me at this point for a world government, one world government, and a one world monetary system than COVID-19. I mean, the ramifications of what are about to come to us in 2021 is mind-blowing. And I'm going to talk about, well, let me get back to my presentation so I can talk about the Karens of the world, right? What is this? This is...
It's not just bricks. It's not just bricks. Accusations are also being hurled about who is responsible for this destruction. On Monday, President Trump pushed the idea that outside agitators were behind much of the conflict.
Our nation has been gripped by professional anarchists, violent mobs, arsonists, looters, criminals, rioters, Antifa, and others.
Today, the White House doubled down on that idea, going so far as to suggest activists and professional anarchists are invading our communities, staging bricks and weapons to instigate violence. That post and its accompanying video was taken down, and with good reason.
This is all unfounded.
This investigative researcher says that hasn't stopped mythmongers from blaming everyone, from undercover police to the far right, to Antifa to the far left, for planting bricks to goad protesters into violence.
I think it's really important that people don't point fingers at this time when we don't have the fact checking and the correct information.
But brick by brick, fact checkers are getting to the bottom of these posts. Like this video in Los Angeles.
I don't know, man. That don't look right to me.
A Jewish community center clarified it placed them there to protect its property.
Some random ass bricks, bro. Ain't no construction.
And these, not so random. Video evidence shows they were there before George Floyd was killed.
So even though the White House account took down that video, the damage is already done. They have amplified conspiracy theories through this video and through posting it on the official White House account.
CBC News asked the White House why it posted those claims and then later removed them. The White House did not respond. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Toronto.
Now, again, looking at this from the lens, through the lens of the programming, right? Looking at this through the lens of the programming. I know for a fact that there were bricks that were put in different communities where they were expecting riots, right? This is a fact. It's the programming is what we just watched, the debunking, right, so to speak. But I've seen people that I knew personally that sent me video from different cities where there were actually strategically placed bricks in this area, right? Which means that they want riots, which means that they want to create chaos, right? In order to move their agenda forward. Well, what is the agenda? Why do they want chaos? They want to start a race war, right? Now, excuse me. There is a civil war happening. It's not physical yet, but there's a civil war in the makings with white people. And Donald Trump is the precipice. Is that the right word? He's the protagonitor. I hope I'm saying that right. In order to bring a lot of this about, right? So when they say Antifa, they're talking about anti-fascist, right? This is all language that ties back into these white political ideologies, communism, fascism, socialism, right? Shit that we don't even concern ourselves with, that's playing out in our community now. You have these white people who claim Antifa, who claim to represent Black Lives Matter and Black people's best interests, smashing windows, right? They're wearing all black. You can't even see who they're. Very smart. Wearing all black. You can't see who they are. They can't be identified, right? And they're coming to you in the name of representing Black Lives Matter and Black interests. Well, my thing about that, and my question for you, Antifa, as well as all of the white liberals who have been marching and protesting on behalf of Black people, there are still, some say, hundreds of sundown towns in America. There are literally places in this country where Black people know, and everybody in those environments know, that Black people cannot be found out after a certain time at night. Otherwise, they risk dying, violence, whatever you want to call it. All across this country, there's a book called Sundown Towns. If I had my books, I would read some of the passages from you. It's a recently released book. If you, O ye Antifa, and white liberals, white politicians, white informers, white social media gurus, influencers, if you really are serious about the interests of protecting the interests of Black people, then why don't you use your platforms, right? Instead of coming into our communities and smashing our windows, why don't you use your platforms and your voices to discuss that? Discuss the fact that there are still places where Black people cannot travel freely in this country, and everybody knows it and nobody talks about it. We can get to reparations in just a second, right? See, our problem is we don't have a strong political education. And when I say a strong political education, I'm not just talking about the things that they talk about in law school or the things that are in the books. I'm talking about the way this government actually works. There is a civil war brewing between white people. A lot of those white people, those protesters that are out in the streets with you, are upset because their personal what's the word? Their personal freedoms have been limited. White people have never really been told what to do. They've never been marginalized. They've never been oppressed. They've never experienced injustice. Not individually. Yes, some white people experience injustice, but collectively, there has never been a time in modern history where white people have been told, you need to sit in your house, you cannot go to your job, you only have to get money from the government, you have been fired or laid off, and there's nothing we can do about it except give you unemployment. Like, white people are now experiencing what indigenous and native and Black people and melanated people around the world have been experiencing for some time now. We know how to cope. We know how to pivot and adjust. They don't. So a lot of that energy and that frustration, and I'm not saying there aren't some white people that legitimately want to look out for Black people, or that were legitimately disturbed because of George Floyd, or that were legitimately disturbed because of Breonna Taylor. I believe that there are some. But I also believe that a lot of that energy that spilled out into those streets protesting was not necessarily about Black Lives Mattering. It was about people feeling a sense of frustration, of pain that they didn't know how to express, and they needed a way to express it. We as a people and as a culture need to have discernment to be able to know what it is that we are looking at and who it is that we are standing next to. Because if you are marching and protesting with a bunch of people that are steeped in fear and chaos and confusion and ignorance, again, the only thing Satan needs is your consent, and your fear is your consent. If you're going to march, march in power. If you're going to protest, protest in power. And know who it is that you are aligning yourself with. Because that Antifa shit, that, you know what I'm saying? That's a white people are at war. There's a war happening in the pyramid that we are not in. That language, I hear Killer Mike sometimes when he starts talking about fascism and what? Not to say that we shouldn't know about this stuff, but you really believe that shit? Okay. And I love Killer Mike, but come on, bruh. Stop.
St. Louis. Tonight, cities across the country are bracing for a fifth night of protests following the deadly arrest of George Floyd in Minneapolis. Today, President Trump urged authorities to, quote, get tougher. In Tallahassee, Florida today, a pickup drove into a crowd protesting police brutality. Witnesses say the driver revved his engine before moving forward. No serious injuries are reported. It was one of several demonstrations across the country. CBS's Jeff Pegues begins our coverage in Minneapolis.
Over the last few nights, Minnesota has seen its share of violence and arson. But tonight could be the most dangerous night of all. Law enforcement officials believe that extremist organizations have infiltrated the protest, intent on stirring up trouble.
After 5 nights of violence, federal and state officials now have a better idea of who may be behind it. Attorney General William Barr.
The voices of peaceful protest are being hijacked by violent radical elements.
Investigators are pointing to white supremacist organizations and far left-wing extremist groups as being responsible for some of the violence. There has been widespread looting and arson. There have also been violent clashes with law enforcement. Before sunrise today, the cleanup was underway. Later in the day, residents brought brooms to help sweep up the debris. Emotions are raw after the death of 46-year-old George Floyd in police custody.
See how
Former
they
police
keep
officer
showing
Derek
the
Chauvin
murder,
was
right?
arrested on Friday on third-degree murder
Keep showing you the
and
images.
second-degree manslaughter charges. He was captured on cell
This is
phone video
programming.
pressing his knee into Floyd's neck
Desensitizing the
for more
world
than
to black
8
death.
minutes.
Desensitizing black
Chilling
people to
images
that
sparked
death.
outrage across the country.
And sparking fear
There have been protests
and
in
chaotic
Boston
energy.
and Atlanta where demonstrators shattered windows and tossed rocks into CNN's headquarters. In New York City, officers in riot gear faced off with protesters, making more than 200 arrests. Today in the Twin Cities, officials asked the peaceful demonstrators to stay home tonight, setting up a potential showdown between law enforcement and the groups behind the violence. Minnesota officials say about 80% of the arrests so far are of people from out of state. Officials say their tactics against the agitators are evolving. And while they respect peaceful demonstrations, there is a limit.
Those rights stop at the end of a Molotov cocktail thrown into an open business.
More members of the National Guard are rolling into the Twin Cities. The state's governor has authorized a full mobilization for the first time since World War II. The losses have been staggering here for people like Dr. Ali Barbarawi, whose dental clinic has been reduced to rubble. From his home last night, he watched his security camera video as the arsonists busted into the clinic, rummaged through his drawers.
And now, this morning, you see it. What do you see? Total chaos. Total chaos. It's not going to help anything.
The cleanup here has already begun, but this city can't make a full recovery until the violence stops, and that's why officials hope that the next 12 to 24 hours will be a turning point. Samantha.
Jeff.
There is a civil war that is taking place with white people. And for those of you black people that are in Louisville, Kentucky, that are in Stone Mountain, Georgia, or certain areas of Georgia, Florida, very racist state, a lot of the places in the Bible Belt, even some of the places in Northern America, in the northern parts of the country, You need to be very, very careful about attending these marches and these rallies, because they're about to turn up on each other. And if you are in alignment with that frequency, black, white, or otherwise, you're going to get caught up in the midst of that. When nothing changes, they have an excuse for people to focus on. Built-in alibis, always distracting, organized chaos. That's all we keep seeing is organized chaos, organized chaos. Here's Joe Biden and Kamala Harris at the Democratic National Convention. And again, back to programming, I just found it so ironic that they kept showing different video clips of them, and also at the actual convention where they're wearing masks, and then 2 minutes later they don't have the masks on anymore. This is purely programming to get you used to this very unnormal, unnatural way of living. And I don't give a damn what nobody says. All you people write me yelling and screaming about you knowing people who died from COVID and how I'm not taking it seriously and how I'm telling the wrong people the wrong thing. There is absolutely nothing that is normal or natural about this. It weirds me out. I will never, ever, ever get used to it. Seeing people walking around in masks, seeing people driving in masks, it is purely fear-based consciousness that is motivating and operating the overall consciousness of this country. And don't write me about this. Just wait for me to put out part 4 when I talk specifically about this, and then we can actually have a conversation. But this right here, the imagery, is purely for propaganda and for programming. So for all you Biden flag wavers and Kamala Harris flag wavers, again, we're talking about the lesser of two evils. Let's be clear what it is that we're looking at here. Joe Biden is from the same umbrella as George Bush, the father, George Bush, the son, Barack Obama, the Clintons, Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton was absolutely supposed to be the president. There was a coup, meaning that Donald Trump was never supposed to be president. He never even intended on winning. He ran purely for the sake of his own vanity and to hear his own self-talk and to further his aspirations to be a celebrity and to be wealthy. And the people at the top of the pyramid were having a fight, and there was a coup, and he ended up getting elected, and that's why he's in office right now. Hillary Clinton was supposed to be the president. She was supposed to be the one that was running the country when COVID-19 and the race wars and all of this stuff started happening. This stuff has been pre-planned for a long, 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 long time now. And if you have been reading the works of the people who have actually been in power, then you are not a stranger to this. This is not far-fetched information. If you have been operating purely based on what the news media says and what your teachers told you and what they said in school and what they said in college, then all of this information is probably blindsiding you. But if you've actually been awake and paying attention, this is not far-fetched or major news for you. And I know for most people, it is. Presidential candidate financial overview. Donald Trump so far has raised fundraising through their own personal, friends, family, or whatever, supporters, more than 300 million. Joe Biden is now past 250 million, on his way to 300 million. I think the Obama campaign raised a good 300, 400 million. Hillary Clinton's campaign raised, hundreds of million when she ran her campaign. It's like, where is all this money going? And if these presidential candidates can come together and raise 300 million to run a 2-year or a 3-year or a 2-year presidential campaign, why can't they raise that money and put that money back into actual social services, right? If Kamala Harris can represent defunding the police and actually have a say in that and talk about maybe bringing that into our legislation or into the reality, why can't, if she doesn't get selected, whatever language you want to use, if Joe Biden doesn't get elected or selected, why can't they go on a campaign and raise money to actually raise money to finance and fund real social public safety, justice campaigns that will actually impact and affect people. How come when Barack Obama got out of office, he faded to black? Why can't he create another powerhouse machinery where he can raise $300 million and put that money into Chicago and helping the violence and the situation there? That's a real question. And just for the sake of conversation, let's be clear. Hillary Clinton won the public vote by almost 3 million votes. So why wasn't the Electoral College on the chopping block as soon as this happened? Because it's not real. And when I say it's not real, I mean it's theater. I mean the people who are actually screaming at you and telling you that if you don't vote, you're a part of the problem, but won't actually commit to really understanding what the Electoral College means and then dismantling it. So you're going to go to war with me. And when I say me, I'm just using me to make the point. You'll go to war with a person like me over my stance on voting, whether you have power, whether it gives you power or not, all that shit. But you don't really have anything to say about the Electoral College. The fact that the United States elected Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump still became the president. How at this point anybody black or anybody with common sense could still be screaming at the top of their lungs about the importance of voting without addressing this shit? You're hypocritical and you really don't understand how power is working behind the scenes and how decisions are actually being made. And I don't want to hear it. I don't. So the lesser of two evils. If you tell me that I'm voting for the lesser of two evils, I don't want to vote for evil. I'm not telling people not to vote. I'm breaking down the psychology of how we think. It's madness. What if Joe Biden wins the public vote and Trump gets elected again? Are you going to spend the next 4 years talking about the Electoral College or talking about voter repression or talking about the same exact talking points that people have been talking about for 20 years now? It's a script. You are all reading a script. This is theater that's playing out, and it's all supposed to make you think that your voice and your opinion and your vote actually matters, when in the bigger scheme of things, what really actually matters is how you are thinking and how you are feeling and identifying your ability to rule and to govern yourself. Again, the kingdom of God versus Satan's world. The power is already in you, whether you vote or not. Whether Trump gets voted or not, I don't care. Whether Biden gets elected or not, it's not going to make a difference in my world. Will it make a difference in yours? Do you think your world's going to fall apart if Trump gets back in office? White women hate Trump. They're really going to go batshit crazy if he gets elected again. Who's ruling you? So I said I was going to talk about, I don't know why this is some of my slides. Okay, there we go. The list of NBA arenas that will be used as voting centers for the 2020 election. The effort was boosted after NBA players walked out in demand of justice for the shooting of Police Blake. Some arenas will serve as early voting sites, blah, blah, blah. Now, this ain't on LeBron to me. And everybody's trying to make it seem like it's on LeBron. I love LeBron James. He's doing way more. He's doing his part. So whatever we feel about the role that he plays in this, LeBron is 100% on his post, 1000%. That being said, the fact that our NBA players, the most talented, skilled professional athletes in the world, came together and made a stand, and then this is what was produced from that stand, furthers the point that I have been making this whole entire video. We keep pointing people to institutions and things that are outside of them that will not empower them, but will keep them focused on everything but empowering themselves. How is using arenas? I would have been happier if you would have just said, okay, we want a quota for Black hiring in coaching, in the arenas. That's real-time, real-life added value. I don't give a shit about arenas being used as voting stations. I don't. And I'm not gonna lie about it. Do I think it's important to vote? Sure. Do I think we all should vote? Absolutely. We pay our money. It's a part of the process. Get your money's worth. Do I think this should be the focal point when we're literally coming together talking about Black death and being frustrated? The answer is to create arenas where people can vote. If this isn't the mind fuck of all mind fucks, how do we keep getting played like this? This is laughable, bruh. Who was in this meeting? Who decided this? Who suggested this? I need to slap you. With all due respect, and I'm saying that tongue in cheek because I don't want to slap you. I'm not a violent person, but come on, man. We gotta stop getting played like this. This is a mind fuck. Local elections deal with deciding things like property taxes, local judges, auditors, borough council, local government officials, who the mayor is, who will be the school board of directors, township supervisors, tax collectors, open space, where things are going to get built, right? So there is an importance to local elections that I 1000% support, right? But not from the perspective of vote or die. I pay a fee for certain services to get handled. I expect those services to get handled. The same emphasis I put on paying my taxes when I go to the store and buy a bottle of water. In California, I just realized they charge you 5 cents, an extra 5 cents when you buy a plastic bottle because of the implications of, recycling bottled water, et cetera, et cetera. I just realized that. So I bought a 35 gallon thing of 35 bottled waters, right? A case of 35 waters. I had to pay an extra $1.75. So I asked the lady about it. I was like, yeah, you pay 5 cents, blah, blah, blah. Okay. I know there's a pool of plastic floating in the Pacific Ocean right now that is very detrimental to the fish and the ecosystem. I don't mind that. I don't have a problem with that. It's an extra $1.75. That's real-time money, but it's all good. That's the same way I feel about voting locally. Be informed about what's happening in your local area. Check off the box. It doesn't take much, but don't get caught up in the matrix thinking that whatever happens, that it's going to decide or determine your personal power. Because the paradigm shift that we move into right now is not about local or national or federal governments or global governments. It's about personal power, personal magnetism. Who you are and how you stand on your square on a day-to-day basis. This is just semantics. This is how societies get ran. We have to be able to make decisions about potholes and about water and about, you know what I'm saying, education and how much money goes to school systems and how much money goes to colleges. That stuff is important, but it's not more important than your personal power. That's priority number one right now. In the Black community, we keep telling people this is what's most important, and it's not. It's not even in my top 5. It's not even in my top 10, because it's very easy to go vote, place a ballot, and then whatever happens, happens. What you do on a daily basis to govern yourself is what I'm talking about. This is a different level of consciousness and awareness that is going to either move you forward and keep you in the running of how things really are supposed to be in a space of righteousness, God's kingdom, or you're going to continue to be ruled by Satan's world.
Take your mask off!
Yeah, take it off!
Fucking idiot. We're not doing it! Take off your mask! Take it off!
white people, if you think this is something, you marching against wearing masks, and again, I don't, you know what I'm saying? The mask is part of the programming and the propaganda, 100%. And I'm not telling people not to wear masks, particularly if your immune system is, you know, at risk. If you don't eat good, your immune system's at risk. If you don't take care of yourself, your immune system's at risk. You should wear a mask. But I'm not banging against the system about wearing a mask in Target. That shit's the least of my concerns. I go in Target for 20 minutes, I leave, it's not a big deal. But people who have never experienced any real problems, any real injustice, this is a real thing for them. And like I said, next year, when the real shit hits the fan, when the repercussions of all of this take place, when people who have never actually experienced any real suffering, any real hardships, that's when shit's really gonna get wild. This is really gonna become the wild, wild west. And if your personal magnetism, your personal power is in alignment, if you standing on your square and you know who you are and you know what's really going on, this type of shit will happen around you and not affect you. If you're not those things, you are gonna get caught up in the matrix of all of this shit.
An hour ago, are you making my food? No! Why do you even take orders? You can't make them and make those fucking food! Are you fucked? I don't fucking care anymore! I gotta go feed my 2-year-old! Fuck you! You can't take orders, tell people you can't!
There's a video about Karens, but there's one clip I want to show you guys. Where is it?
Oh, it's a thing. I got on. Oh, big damn good work. Oh my God. No, you did that. Now you're going to jail. Now you're going to jail. That's not our problem. You can go, man. Better run. I mean, really. Now you.
White people, you better get your shit together. Because I've always said, you know, and I'm speaking collectively, but I don't want this to come off as if as if all white people are running through the streets, banging their heads against society or the world, right? But I've always said that white people's biggest flaw was that they can't see the world from our perspective. And when I say our, I mean everybody else besides white people. You cannot see the world and how we interact with you from your limited vantage point. It's one of your biggest flaws. So we're gonna keep seeing them unraveling. Black people, you better stop aligning yourself with this shit. The same way that I talked about divine judgment, right? White women have been carefully protected, right? Catered to, never really, and I'm not talking about all white women, I'm talking about the collective. I know there are white women who struggle, right? Catered to, handled with kid gloves, always being protected, always being elevated above, right? Other women of other cultures, etc. Well, now that that experience is being pulled away from you, this is your divine judgment, because your men have always treated you as second-class citizens, right? Second class to, you know, to him, first class to everybody else, right? So with your experience as being treated as a second-class citizen, instead of you using that as a motivation to help other women, the broader society, you use that to fuel the fire of your personal, what's the word I'm looking for? You use that to fuel the fire of your, there's a word that I'm looking for and it's on the tip of my tongue. Of your, oh God, I'm getting sleepy, it's 11 o'clock. Privilege. Why couldn't I think of that word? You use that to elevate, right? Your personal privilege. Oh, Black women are they're being mistreated so badly. We see it, but you know, we'll only talk about it if it becomes useful for us. Not all white women, but I'm talking about collectively the culture, right? So you've seen the struggle of people around the world and attached and aligned yourself to the same systems that have continued to perpetuate the struggles and the problems of the people around the world for the sake of your own personal procurement, right? Same thing with white men. Your judgment now, your divine judgment is that you have been telling yourself and telling the world for 2,000 years now, it's a good estimate, that you are the highest and the best, that you represent the highest aspect, Darwinism. The white race is the upper echelon, highest evolutionary factor when it comes to humanity. Well, now Donald Trump is proving you 1,000% wrong because he's got clout, he's got money, he's got fame, he's got influence, he's got all of the things that white men have been aligning themselves with to create this false sense of security, and yet he's literally the laughing stock of the world. Your divine judgment is upon you. How will you act when you have to navigate the world the way that the rest of us have been navigating the world since we stepped on these shores? That's the real question. That is the divine judgment. Can you come out better on the other end with more substance, with more character, or will you be like the Alex Jones of the world? Bait and switch. You still a racist, but you still want to, you're a racist, but you still want to identify, you know, chemtrails and HARP and geoengineering. And it's so funny when I listen to some of these dudes who are conspiracy theorists or who are teaching about things that the world absolutely needs to know, and you still have the audacity to be a racist. Bruh. Shit's astounding to me. I'm almost done, y'all. I think I got maybe one or two more, couple more slides, and then I will be done. Thank you for for engaging with me and for staying with me as I, you know, could try to paint this little picture. I show this is the other white people have gentrified Black Lives Matter. Woman sitting out in front of the police with legs spread eagled. Who the hell was at this protest? What Black woman was at this protest and allowed for this to happen on her watch? Donald Trump is the epitome of showing and proving the world that the white man is not the end-all be-all highest form of anything. He is absolutely repugnant and a narcissist and an idiot. And let me just say, I understand why Donald Trump is the glitch in the matrix. He was not supposed to be the president. So he says certain things sometimes that let you know he is on a certain level aware. Like when he talks about Antifa and when he talks about this different stuff, Donald Trump understands that there are agents of power that are seated throughout the government that are really running the show. The smoke and mirrors campaign that you guys are all worked up about, Donald Trump understands that that's not really what it is. You can tell by certain things that he said, certain things that he latches himself onto, but he's still a devil and he's still ignorant and he's still a very low vibrational being. And the spiritual importance of this moment, Barack Obama being president and then transitioning from Barack Obama to Donald Trump, So you have this Black man who is highly intelligent, very charismatic, beautiful Black family. And that's sitting aside the political aspect, right? Because I told you guys they're all working for the same mission, the same purpose. But that image, and then juxtapose Donald Trump, representing all of the low vibrational aspects that have kept white men in power for so long. All of it is deteriorating right in front of our eyes. All of it is deteriorating right in front of our eyes. So whether it's Trump or whether it's Biden, understand that there is a spiritual lesson that is being imposed on America, specifically that's going to ripple out through the rest of the world to establish the kingdom of God. For that, I am extremely thankful.
Hey everybody, it's official. We are just 100 days out from the 2020 election. And with everything that's been going on this year, this election could not be more important for the future of our country. So all that good work you've been doing, all the outreach, the voter registration parties, the effort to make sure no American has to choose between their health or their vote on election day, that work is more important than ever before. Because every American deserves to have their voice heard at the ballot box. Every American deserves to have a say in the future of this country we all love. So keep that foot on the gas. First, let's make sure everyone we know is registered and ready to vote come November. Then, take it a step further by signing up at whenweallvote.org to participate in our week of action this September. That's when we'll be activating our nationwide network of volunteers to get engaged and get more people registered to vote than ever before. I hope you'll join us. We've only got 100 days left, and we've got to direct every ounce of energy we have into making sure everyone we know understands the importance of their voice and their vote. I know that you all understand that. Let's make sure that everyone in our community does too. Thanks again, everybody. Now let's get this done.
Really, Michelle? Every ounce of energy? So you only get activated during election season? There aren't other substantial things that we could use your energy and your attention to? You can't do an Instagram live and tell Black girls that cucumber challenges is not a good look, or that strippers shouldn't be trying to implement, you know what I'm saying? Like, if we only really hear from you during election season, do we really need to hear from you? I know she's got a book. I know she, puts up nice, writings and stuff and pictures of her family and everything to keep people engaged with what they have going on. But there's a lot of shit happening in our country. If you only get activated when it's election time, I'm not really sure what your value is to the broader community at this point. And I say that with all due respect, because I think she's a very beautiful and talented and potentially powerful sister. The other part of me knows that, once the president gets out of office, that they are very limited in what they can say and do. So Michelle's very limited in what she can say and do at the same time. But that just speaks to the broader cause that I'm making about the limited power that is actually born, or that is actually a part of that arena anyway. And I think, like I said, it's not to, make Michelle out to be the bad person. This is about helping us to really decipher what this political agenda and what the political arena is really about, and how much effort and resources and energy goes specifically into keeping us attached to this system, into thinking that there is actual power in that system when there isn't. The real power is in your personal power, your personal magnetism, and ruling yourself. And we are moving into a paradigm now where if you are not conscientious of being self-ruled, focus on being self-ruled, if you are still waiting for governments and other people outside of you to rule you for you, you're going to get caught up in the matrix. and that goes for all of the Black celebrities that continue to foster this idea, and they use Black celebrities. They use celebrities to push all of the agendas. That's one of the way you can decipher the programming. Amanda Seales said we're going to end up with 4 more years of this devil because folks want to feel right instead of just doing what we got to do right now. I think Amanda Seales is dope, but I also think that she is, you know, only operating from a certain space of consciousness. She posted this, okay, nigga, don't vote. And when you picking cotton next year, I don't want to hear shit from you but old Negro spirituals. I mean, look at how low vibrational, fear-based this language is. There's no power in any of this. You don't make me feel inspired to do anything but unfollow you. This is very low vibrational, fear-based consciousness that we get caught up in every single year. The kingdom of God, being Black is not an automatic ticket into the kingdom. A lot of us are unconsciously sitting back waiting for karma to catch up to white people. It does not work like that. We have to qualify for divine justice. What is your frequency? That is your primary job right now. That is my primary job right now. That is our #1 priority and focus, to fine-tune our frequency, how we are thinking and how we are feeling at any given moment. That is the solution to the problem, to all of the problems, as an individual and collectively. The new paradigm is frequency-based. It has nothing to do with your privilege or what you have. That means white people, that means celebrities, that means people who have money that are used to being, you know, treated a certain type of way. The new paradigm is going to be specifically based on your frequency. The measurement will truly be internal. And this is why we see a lot of people that have money, that have fame, unraveling right now before our eyes. Here's what I want to hear politicians speak about: chemtrails, HAARP, geoengineering, genetically modified food, the negative impacts of vaccine. Who the fuck is Bill Gates? I have yet to hear any Black politician anywhere actually question what gives this man the merit, the validity, the anything, the guts, the balls, the kahunas to say and do some of the shit that he does. That's who I want to hear from. Where are the politicians that are challenging the status quo? Where are the politicians that are talking about the Electoral College and how this election could potentially end up being the same exact thing that happened 4 years ago? Why is nobody talking about that? And reparations. This is the stuff I want to hear about. All this other shit is literally being repeated from 4 years ago and 4 years before that and 4 years before that and 4 years before that. It's the same speech. It's the same spiel. It's the same program. It's the same script. Nothing has changed except the faces. We have to change our language. I do not identify as a minority from a woman's perspective or from a Black woman's perspective. Black people, melanated people, outnumber Europeans on a global level 13-1, at least. The last count from what I know of. We have to stop identifying ourselves with such low frequency language. There's nothing minor about anything that God creates. I am not a minority. And white supremacy, while we have utilized this language in order to pinpoint a certain segment, a certain ideology, a certain ruling class, there's nothing supreme about white. We've got to redefine this, because our language is keeping us imprisoned. Spiritually, mentally, and emotionally imprisoned. The concept, the ideology of white supremacy. And if you're going to use it, read and study the teachings of Dr. Frances Cress Welsing and understand that the concept of white supremacy came from the fear of white genetic annihilation. Their scientists have proven the validity of there being a dominant genetic race and a recessive genetic race. This is science. Don't have to argue with me about it. Your scientists have said it. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing talked about the fear of white genetic annihilation. That is what we are interpreting to be white supremacy. And as she said, anybody who is walking around saying, I'm superior, I'm superior, I'm superior, is really not feeling superior. So anytime I say white supremacy now, it's white supremacy, even though white is not supreme, but for contextual value, so you can understand my point, I use that language. But we need to develop a new language to start speaking about what's happening, because our language is prophecy for what is to come. And I'm going to leave you guys with this quote by the great Dr. Joe Dispenza, who I think all white people should be studying, as well as all of us, but particularly he is a great spiritual scientist who I study and have a great deal of respect for because he approaches science and spirituality from a scientific perspective. He said, if you want to create change, you have to do it from a level of energy that's greater than guilt, greater than pain, greater than fear, greater than anger, greater than shame, and greater than unworthiness. In fact, any lower vibrational energy that you are feeling cannot carry the thought of your future dream. So I ask you, white America, white people, Black America, Black people, how much of our emphasis on voting is done from a place of of guilt, pain, fear, anger, shame, and unworthiness? How much of our energy on a day-to-day basis is born out of positivity, abundance, gratitude, appreciation, high expectations, righteousness, the beauty of nature, the beauty of the blessings of the human body, the beauty and the power of the brain, of the mind? Are we operating from God consciousness, the higher self, or are we operating from Satan, satanic energy, devilish, demonic energy, fear-based consciousness? I don't want that shit nowhere around me. ZaZaAli.com is my website. Thank you guys so much for tuning in again. It's 11:50 my time, which means that I have talked for, I think, 2 hours and 20 minutes. Thank you to those of you guys who stuck with me through to the end. And thank you for your love, for your support, for engaging me, for listening to me. I know it's not, you know, you don't sit around every day and listen to a person talk for 2+ hours. So it means a lot to me that I can hold your attention for that amount of time. And I'm going to put out a few more videos addressing certain things that I feel are important before I fade to Black again. ZaZaAli.com is my website. info@ZaZaAli.com. @ZaZaAli is my email address. And I will put all of the websites for my social media pages there as well. All right. Peace and love. Let me bring myself up again. Thank you guys for staying with me, for rocking with me. I appreciate you. And hopefully, you know, this conversation will move the consciousness forward, which is all that I asked. All right. Peace and love.